My name is Amira. I'm 22 years old, and at the time this happened, I was working as a receptionist at a small design firm in London. Before we go deep into what turned my world upside down, do me a favor, drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and the time. I want to see just how far this story travels. Because what I'm about to share isn't just a story, it's my life. A life that took a twisted, bitter turn the night my parents believed a lie so cruel, it shattered everything I thought I had. That night, they kicked me out of our house like I was a disgrace. No questions. No compassion. Just anger and shame. I stood outside in the cold with nothing but a small overnight bag and a child in my belly, yes, their grandchild, while they slammed the door shut behind me. And the craziest part? That child was heir to a £1 billion legacy they had no idea existed. But I knew. And I wasn't going to let their betrayal go unanswered. My family wasn't wealthy, but we were close, or so I thought. My dad, Kamal, worked construction, and my mum, Layla, ran a home catering business. We weren't perfect, but we laughed over dinner and shared inside jokes. I'm the eldest of 3, and they always said I was their pride. Until the whispers started. It was subtle at first. Mum would come home from the mosque with tight lips and a distant stare. Dad would ask probing questions about my late nights, my phone calls, my makeup. "Who are you trying to impress, Amira?" he asked once, his eyes colder than usual. I didn't know then that someone had planted a lie about me, feeding them twisted stories about who I was dating and what I was doing. I was too busy surviving long shifts, managing rent, and keeping my relationship quiet because of how private Zayn's world had to be. You see, Zayn wasn't just any man, he was the son of billionaire industrialist Al-Hussein. And the media would tear us apart if they found out. I had met Zayn when he walked into my office to finalize a surprise renovation for one of his father's ventures. He dressed simple, hoodie, jeans, and that soft accent that gave nothing away. He never bragged. Never made me feel small. He treated me like a queen in a world where I was used to being invisible. Our relationship moved slowly, secretly. He'd pick me up in a basic car, no entourage, no noise. We'd eat at hidden cafes, talk about our dreams, laugh until our stomachs hurt. I told him about my parents, my younger siblings, how I was saving to someday open my own design studio. But Zayn was careful, and I respected that. I knew his life was complicated. But I also knew he loved me. When I found out I was pregnant, I was terrified, but also strangely hopeful. I thought maybe, just maybe, this would be the beginning of a new kind of family, mine. I didn't know it would trigger my parents to betray me. The day everything unraveled, I came home to find my father waiting in the living room, face like stone. Mum stood with her arms folded, my younger sister peeking from the hallway. "We heard," my father said without preamble. "You're carrying some rich man's bastard. And you lied about everything." My breath caught. "Who told you that?" I asked. "You think we don't hear what people say?" he shot back. "That boy, he's just using you. They say he's married. That you're a disgrace to this house." My mother, who once kissed my forehead every morning, now looked at me like I was dirt. "Get out, Amira. Go back to where you came from. You've brought shame here." I begged. I cried. I tried to explain, but it didn't matter. They had already chosen to believe the voices outside instead of the daughter they raised. As I walked out of that house, heartbroken, belly trembling, and tears blinding me, I made a silent vow. The day would come when they'd regret that door ever closing. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on a bench outside the train station, arms wrapped around myself, afraid to call anyone. My phone buzzed twice, once from Zayn, the second time from my best friend, Jada. I didn't answer either. My body felt like it had been hollowed out. The wind bit through my thin jacket, and the hard truth bit even harder. My parents had disowned me based on a rumor. No facts. No questions. Just judgment. I wasn't even given a chance to speak. I had never felt so disposable. But the baby growing inside me deserved better than this. I had to protect them. I had to stay strong. At sunrise, I finally called Zayn. "Don't hang up," I whispered. "They kicked me out." Within 20 minutes, his car pulled up. He didn't ask me questions. He just opened the door, helped me in, and pulled me close. "You're with me now," he said. "No one gets to treat you like that ever again." Zayn took me to a private flat tucked inside a gated property in Kensington, a place I didn't even know he owned. It was warm, serene, and nothing like the chaos I had just escaped. I showered, ate, and slept for 12 hours straight. When I woke up, he was sitting at the edge of the bed, scrolling through emails, like he'd never left. "I need to fix this," I mumbled, voice hoarse. He turned to me with a softness I'll never forget. "No, love. We fix this together." And for the first time in weeks, I breathed. That week, Zayn had everything arranged: a private doctor for the pregnancy, a lawyer to start handling what he called future contingencies, and even security for when we went out. "The vultures always circle when they smell inheritance," he joked, trying to lighten the mood. But I could see it in his eyes. He was preparing for war. What I didn't know was that whispers about us had already started to creep into his family's boardrooms, his father's empire, and my former neighborhood. 3 weeks passed in a strange haze. I would spend mornings curled up with baby books, afternoons learning to cook new dishes, and evenings just talking with Zayn. He kept things light, but every now and then, he'd glance at his phone with a clenched jaw. "They're asking questions," he said one evening. "My family. They know something's up." I sat silently, unsure of how to feel. "Do they know about me?" "Not yet," he replied. "But they will soon. And when they do, it won't be easy." I nodded, already knowing what he meant. I didn't fit the mold of what they expected: the billionaire heir's girlfriend, now pregnant, now living in one of their properties. But we weren't a scandal. We were a family in the making. And I was tired of hiding like I had done something wrong. It was time to stop playing small. Time to take my power back. I didn't know how yet. But I was going to make sure the truth came out, and when it did, everyone who doubted me would have to answer for it. Then came the letter. It arrived on expensive stationery, with the Al-Hussein family crest sealed in gold. Zayn opened it slowly, his eyes scanning each word, face unreadable. "They want to meet," he said finally. "My father, the board, everyone. They want to know who you are and what your intentions are." My stomach twisted. This wasn't a meet the parents dinner. This was a boardroom interrogation, power players trying to decide if I was a liability. "I don't want you to go," he said softly. "I can shield you." But I shook my head. "No. Let them see me. Let them try to judge me like everyone else has. I won't hide anymore." Zayn nodded, his pride clear. "Then we walk in together." And so we prepared, not just for a meeting, but for a reckoning. The girl my parents discarded was no longer broken. I was about to walk into a billionaire's empire not as a mistake, but as the woman carrying its future. The boardroom was more intimidating than I expected. Massive marble floors, tall windows that overlooked the heart of London, and a long oak table surrounded by men and women who could ruin lives with a single vote. I held Zayn's hand tightly as we walked in. His father, Al-Hussein, sat at the head of the table. He was older than I'd seen in photos, his silver hair slicked back, his presence icy and commanding. "You brought her," he said, not even hiding the disapproval in his voice. "Good. Let's begin." I was seated beside Zayn, directly across from Rahman and 2 of the family's legal advisors. There were no handshakes. No smiles. Only sharp glances and thinly veiled suspicion. I knew what they were thinking: another outsider looking to cash in on a billionaire bloodline. I swallowed my fear. I had to survive this moment for my child. "Miss Amira," one of the lawyers began, "are you here to claim any stake in the Al-Hussein estate?" I smiled, calmly. No. I'm here because I love Zayn. Not his fortune. That answer caused a stir. Rahman narrowed his eyes. Love doesn't protect legacy, he snapped. My son is the future of a global enterprise, and you are, he paused, looking me up and down. A receptionist. The insult stung, but I didn't flinch. A receptionist who raised herself, worked since she was 15, and didn't even tell her parents who the father was when they kicked her out pregnant. That silenced the room. I didn't come here for money, I continued. I came because my child deserves to know the truth about where they come from, even if you don't accept me. Rahman leaned back in his chair, quiet. Then, almost reluctantly, he said, the child. Is there proof it's Zayn's? Before Zayn could speak, I pulled a folded sheet from my bag. A paternity test. Zayn had insisted on it weeks ago, not because he doubted me, but because he knew this day would come. The moment they read the results, I saw something shift in Rahman's face. Fear? Realization? Maybe both. Rahman didn't speak after that. The rest of the meeting was cold but professional. They asked about my background, my education, my plans. I answered honestly, refusing to perform or beg for their approval. Zayn held my hand the whole time. When it was over, Rahman stood. You may not be who I would have chosen, he said, but I see that you are not weak. That, at least, is something. It wasn't acceptance, but it wasn't rejection either. As we walked out of the building, the wind hit me hard. I felt like I'd aged 5 years in that room. You were brilliant, Zayn whispered. I've never been prouder. I smiled, but I was still shaken. All that power, all that judgment. And yet, none of it broke me. I thought back to my parents. Would they have defended me like that? Fought for me in a room full of doubters? No. They believed gossip and threw me away. But the world was about to change. Because word of that meeting was already leaking, and it would reach my parents sooner than I thought. 2 nights later, my mother called. I stared at the phone like it was a ghost. I hadn't saved her number, but I knew it by heart. I let it ring, then rang again. On the 3rd call, I answered. Hello? There was silence. Then a choked voice, Amira? My heart tightened. What do you want? I asked, trying to sound colder than I felt. We saw the article, she said. About the billionaire's son and the child. I stayed silent. Your father, he didn't know. We didn't know, Amira. I could hear her crying. Please, just come home. Let's talk. I almost laughed. You threw me out like trash. You didn't ask. You didn't care. We were scared, she whispered. People were saying such things, we thought we were protecting you. My voice broke then. You didn't protect me. Zayn did. I protected myself. She begged, softly, again. Please, Amira. We want to see you. We want to see the baby. I hung up without answering. Because I wasn't ready to forgive. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Zayn didn't ask me what my mum said. He just watched me from across the room, his eyes full of patience and quiet support. I curled into the sofa, fingers resting over my belly. Our baby had started kicking, faint but real. A small life pushing against me like it was trying to remind me, you're not alone. I thought about the phone call non-stop. My mother's voice wasn't just filled with guilt, it was laced with panic. She had seen the headlines. Billionaire heir's secret girlfriend expecting first grandchild. The tabloids had caught wind of the paternity test leaking from someone in the boardroom. It wasn't supposed to go public, but it did. And now, every person who once whispered behind my back suddenly wanted to call me family again. But it wasn't love they felt. It was hunger for connection to power. I had gone from disgrace to royalty overnight in their eyes. But I wasn't about to let anyone just waltz back into my life like nothing had happened. That weekend, Al-Hussein personally requested a private dinner with me. Just me, no lawyers, no board members, not even Zayn. I agreed. I wore a simple navy dress and flats, no designer bags, no flashy jewelry. I wanted him to see the same woman they judged weeks ago, only stronger. We met in a candlelit dining room at one of his hotels. He stood when I entered and gestured to the seat across from him. "Thank you for coming," he said. "You didn't have to summon me," I replied. "You could have visited your future grandchild's home." He smiled faintly. "Touché." We spoke quietly. He asked about my goals, what kind of future I saw for myself and the child. I told him I didn't need their money, I needed respect. "Your empire doesn't scare me, Mr. Al-Hussein," I said. "I've been judged by people with nothing. I can handle being judged by people with everything." He stared at me for a long time, then finally nodded. "The board is meeting again soon. They're discussing inheritance and public statements. If you're to be part of this family, we'll need to prepare you." Prepare me? The words sank like ice. I wasn't some girl being handed a glass slipper, I was being given a seat at a very dangerous table. The Al-Hussein name wasn't just wealth, it was legacy, scrutiny, enemies, expectations. And with the baby growing inside me, I had become the key to that legacy's future. I returned to Zayn that night quieter than usual. He wrapped me in his arms. "What did he say?" I leaned into him. "They want me to become visible. Public." He nodded. I figured this would come. That's when he showed me the photos. Paparazzi shots already making rounds online, me entering the dinner. People speculating about the mystery girl. I was already a headline. And it would only get worse. But I didn't flinch. "They wanted to bury me in shame," I said. "Now they'll have to watch me rise." Zayn kissed my forehead. "You don't need their approval, Amira. But if you choose to stand tall in their world, I'll stand with you." The next day, a letter arrived. This time, from my father. His handwriting was shaky, but still familiar. He didn't beg. He just wrote, "I failed you. I let fear speak louder than love. I hope, one day, you'll let us make things right." There was no manipulation. No excuses. Just regret. I read it 10 times, unsure of how to feel. I was angry, but I wasn't bitter. They had thrown me out, yes. But they hadn't destroyed me. I had rebuilt myself, stronger. And now I had a decision to make. Not just about forgiving them, but about what kind of woman I wanted to become from this point on. I wasn't just a receptionist. I wasn't just someone's daughter. I was about to become the mother of a child born into empire. And if the Al-Husseins thought I would sit quietly on the side while they shaped my child's future without me, they were sorely mistaken. The press went wild. Articles, interviews, conspiracy threads, every headline carried some twisted version of the truth. Receptionist carries billionaire's grandchild. Gold digger or future queen? I became a name they didn't just whisper but shouted, judged, dissected. My photos were splashed across gossip sites, and suddenly, people who wouldn't hold the door for me now paused to snap pictures. It was exhausting, but I didn't shrink. I carried myself with grace, not for the public, but for my child. I began attending media training classes at Zayn's insistence. At first, I hated it. Smiling through venom, staying calm when reporters baited me, it felt fake. But then I understood. It wasn't about being fake. It was about surviving. It was armor. And if I was going to walk into a war of legacies, I needed every weapon I could find. One morning, I was invited to sit in on a private Al-Hussein family forum. This was different from a board meeting. It was a gathering of blood, siblings, cousins, uncles. I wasn't officially part of them, but Zayn refused to attend unless I did. The moment we entered, conversation stalled. Women glanced at my belly, and men muttered under their breath. A heavy-set woman with a pearl necklace and a voice like a judge asked bluntly, "So this is the girl who's turned the family upside down?" Before I could respond, Zayn said evenly, "This is the woman carrying the only next generation Al-Hussein. She's not turning anything upside down. She's anchoring it." The silence that followed made the walls feel like they were closing in. But I held my chin high. I didn't need them to like me. I just needed them to know I wasn't going anywhere. That day, Rahman made a formal announcement. Pending final board review, Zayn's child will be added to the future airline. That statement might have sounded like business, but it was a royal decree in their world. It meant our child wasn't just recognized. They were legacy. Future. Untouchable. And by extension, I had become a permanent fixture in their story. I returned home that evening overwhelmed. I thought of my father's letter again. The words still echoed, "I let fear speak louder than love." I didn't know if I was ready to forgive, but something in me softened. I remembered the girl who stood shivering outside their home, belly full of hope and heart full of pain. I wanted to go back and hug her. Tell her she'd survive. Tell her she'd sit in rooms that once seemed unreachable. But more than anything, I wanted to tell her she'd get her voice back, and when she used it, the world would have no choice but to listen. The next day, I did something no one expected. I posted a public letter on social media, not a rant, not a clapback, but a declaration. I wrote about the pain of being disowned. I wrote about being judged before anyone ever asked me the truth. I wrote about the strength it took to carry a child and my dignity at the same time. And I ended with this: to every woman who's been cast aside, doubted, or silenced, remember, the truth always rises. And when it does, no empire, no surname, no history can bury it again. That post went viral. Women I had never met flooded my inbox. Journalists reached out. Influencers reposted. And suddenly, I wasn't just the girl with the billionaire's baby. I was Amira. A voice. A mother. A survivor. And I wasn't just carrying legacy anymore, I was building one. For 3 weeks after I posted that letter, my life shifted into something unrecognizable. I no longer walked into rooms unseen. I was followed, photographed, quoted. But not for scandal, for strength. People weren't just curious about the billionaire's girlfriend anymore. They wanted to hear from Amira, the girl who had been cast aside and still rose with grace. I got offers to speak at women's conferences, brand endorsements, even a book deal. I turned most of them down. I wasn't ready to become a symbol. I just wanted to protect my child. Still, I knew something had permanently changed. I had carved space in a world that tried to erase me. And just as I began settling into this strange new chapter, a knock came at the door that would flip everything again. It was my father. He stood outside the Kensington flat like he didn't belong. Suit wrinkled, hair thinner than I remembered. He looked smaller. "Amira," he whispered, his voice almost breaking, "I've been trying to reach you." I didn't invite him in. I stepped outside, arms folded, belly prominent beneath my sweater. He looked down at it with a kind of awe and shame. "So it's true," he muttered. I thought. I didn't know what to believe. My voice didn't tremble. "You believed everyone but me." He nodded, swallowing hard. "Your mother's sick. Guilt, stress, she hasn't left her bed in days. She reads your interviews, your letter. She cries every night. Amira, we made a mistake. The kind we may never come back from. But, can we try?" I wanted to scream, to throw every memory of that freezing night back in his face. But something in me shifted. Maybe it was the baby kicking. Maybe it was exhaustion. But I didn't scream. I just said, "Trying doesn't erase what you did. But maybe, it's a place to start." I didn't let him stay. But I promised I would visit my mother. Zayn didn't try to talk me out of it. He simply kissed my forehead and said, "You're stronger than all of them put together." The next day, I returned to the house that had once been my prison. The walls looked smaller. The hallway narrower. My little brother peeked at me from behind the curtain like I was a stranger. When I stepped into my mother's room, I found her frail and pale, eyes sunken from nights of crying. She looked at my belly and covered her mouth with both hands. "Oh, Amira," she wept. "What have I done?" I stood frozen. "You threw me out with nothing. Not even a blanket." Her face crumbled. "I was scared. They told us he was using you. That you'd ruin your life. I thought I was saving you." I sat by her bed. "You didn't save me. But I saved myself. And now, you'll have to earn your place in my life again." And for once, she didn't try to justify anything. She just nodded and cried. When I returned to the flat, I stood by the window and watched the city buzz below. Zayn walked up behind me, resting his hands on my shoulders. "How did it go?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. I was thinking about how silence used to be my punishment. Back then, when my parents disapproved, they'd go silent, pretend I didn't exist. But now, my silence had become power. It made them come to me. It made them sit in their guilt. It made them listen. I turned to him and said, "It went exactly how it was supposed to." He smiled. "Then you're ready." "Ready for what?" I asked. He held up a velvet box. Inside was a ring. Not just an engagement ring, but the Al-Hussein family heirloom, passed down for generations. "You were never just the girl who got lucky," he said. "You're the storm they never saw coming." And in that moment, I knew, I wasn't just carrying a billionaire's bloodline. I had become the legacy. The day the engagement went public, everything exploded. News outlets swarmed, headlines screamed, and even the Al-Hussein stock prices jumped. Zayn and I were officially engaged, no longer a secret, no longer the scandal. Overnight, I became a public figure. Every photo, every movement, every word I spoke was scrutinized. Strangers who once whispered that I was a gold digger now called me a symbol of grace. But behind every smiling photo and glowing headline, I felt the weight of something heavier: consequence. My child would be born into a world that devoured people like me. I had fought so hard to earn a seat at the table, but now I was beginning to realize, the table was rigged. Power didn't protect you. It tested you. And people who once loved you would still find a reason to hate you if they couldn't control you. That week, Rahman called for a reputation strategy meeting. They wanted to decide how to present me officially in interviews. "We can mention your background," modestly, said one of the PR women. "But we suggest softening the details. Receptionist doesn't sound polished enough for investors." I blinked at her. "You want to erase who I was?" She glanced nervously at Rahman. "We just want to protect the brand." I stood up. "I am the brand now. You don't get to clean me up and hang me in your hallway like a painting. I earned my scars. You're not cutting them out of my story." For a moment, no one moved. Rahman slowly exhaled and said, "She's right. If we sanitize her, we lose the power of the narrative." It wasn't exactly support, but it was permission. And in this family, permission was everything. A few nights later, Zayn's cousin Tara invited me to a private women's dinner, an Al-Hussein family tradition. I didn't want to go. But Zayn encouraged me. "They need to see you," he said. "On your own terms." So I went. The dinner was held in a gold-lit garden in Surrey, vines wrapped around stone pillars, waiters in tuxedos serving food I couldn't pronounce. I was the last to arrive. And the moment I sat down, the older women began the inquisition. "Do you intend to raise your child with our faith? What schools will you consider? Will you return to work, or assume the expected duties of your role?" I looked around the table. Women born into wealth, some elegant, others cold. But all of them waiting to decide if I was worthy. I smiled politely, then said, I wasn't raised to be anyone's accessory. I'll raise my child with dignity, love, and truth. And I will work, not because I need to, but because I want to. That's what power looks like to me. One woman scoffed. Another nodded silently. But it didn't matter. I wasn't there to be liked. I was there to take up space. Later that night, Zayn pulled me aside on the balcony. You killed it, he whispered, pride in his voice. They've never met anyone like you. I stared out at the city lights. They don't have to like me, I said. They just have to realize I'm not going anywhere. He grinned. And what about your family? Your parents? I sighed. My father keeps writing. My mother calls once a week. They're trying, Zayn. But every time I hear their voices, I remember the silence. The door slamming. The cold night. He squeezed my hand gently. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, Amira. But it can mean peace. I looked down at my hand, now heavy with the weight of the Al-Hussein ring. The ring they once would have laughed to imagine on my finger. I wasn't seeking revenge anymore. I was building a throne from the pieces they tried to break. And soon, the whole world would see it. I was 7 months pregnant when the storm finally hit. It wasn't gossip or paparazzi this time, it was a leak. A private email chain between some of the Al-Hussein board members had been exposed. In it, they discussed options to secure the legacy from what they called Amira's uncontrolled background. They spoke of me like I was a wild card. A threat. There were even suggestions of offering me a payout to relocate abroad and quietly raise the child without using the family name. I read every word 3 times. Each line sliced deeper than the last. And the worst part? Rahman's name was included. He hadn't written anything aggressive himself, but he hadn't stopped them either. That silence, again, thundered louder than hate. I sat alone in the nursery we'd just painted, watching the baby mobile spin slowly, feeling the walls close in. This wasn't just betrayal. It was confirmation, they still didn't see me as worthy. Not after all the meetings, the dinners, the headlines. Not even after I'd fought my way through fire. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I called Zayn. He was silent the entire time I read the emails aloud. When I finished, his voice was tight, controlled. Where did it leak from? Does it matter? I said quietly. They've been planning to cut me out, Zayn. This entire time. He exhaled. No. Not anymore. That night, he did something I'll never forget. He called an emergency meeting with Rahman and the board. I didn't go with him. I stayed in the nursery, holding the small, folded blanket I had knitted for our child. But later, he came home and told me what he said. He had stood at the center of the boardroom table and announced, if you try to erase her, you erase me. If you want me in this empire, she stays. As my wife. As the mother of my heir. As your equal. Rahman, stunned, reportedly tried to interject. But Zayn didn't let him. I've made my choice. You can either accept it, or lose your son. That wasn't just a defense. That was a line in the sand. The media caught the story before morning. Billionaire son threatens to leave empire over fiancé. It trended for 2 days straight. And this time, the public was on my side. Women's rights advocates, influencers, even politicians reposted my open letter again. But it was the quiet messages that hit hardest, single mothers saying I gave them strength. Disowned daughters saying they felt seen. I didn't just win a fight. I sparked something. And suddenly, the Al-Hussein family needed me. Not for press, not for tradition, but for credibility. My voice had become untouchable. And they knew it. A week later, Rahman requested to meet again. Just the 2 of us. He arrived at the flat quietly, with no assistant, no driver. When he entered, he looked around, noticed the baby clothes on the couch, the framed photo of Zayn and me. "This is your home," he said. I nodded. "Yes. And soon, my child's." He was quiet for a long moment before finally speaking. "I didn't stop them. That was my failure. I didn't respond." He continued, "But your strength, it's undeniable. I don't ask for your forgiveness. I ask for your leadership. You're going to be the future matriarch of this family. And I need you to help shape what that means, for your child. For the name." I stood, arms crossed. "Then we begin with truth. You don't get to bury women like me anymore." He met my gaze and said something I never thought I'd hear, "Lead the way, Amira." I closed the door behind him and exhaled for what felt like the first time in weeks. That night, I stood by the window again. The same one I had looked out of when my father returned. But this time, I didn't feel like a girl who needed to fight for acceptance. I was acceptance. I had become the mirror they couldn't ignore. I was no longer trying to earn a place at the table. I was building a new one, and those who once shut their doors on me would have to wait outside, knocking. The day our son was born, the city felt quiet. Not just outside, but inside me. All the noise, the fights, the betrayals, they faded the moment I held him. His eyes were dark, wide, curious. He didn't cry immediately. He just stared at me, like he'd been waiting his whole life to see who I was. Zayn stood over us, tears in his eyes, whispering, "He has your strength already." And in that moment, everything made sense. The nights on a train station bench. The whispers in boardrooms. The silence of my parents. The headlines. I didn't carry a child into this world, I carried a revolution. This little boy wasn't just bloodline or power or status. He was proof. Proof that a girl they tried to erase had become the woman their future depended on. We named him Rafi. And just like that, the family scrambled to rewrite history. Suddenly, I was being asked to represent the Al-Hussein Foundation. To attend charity galas, meet diplomats, speak on family values. I laughed at the irony. The girl they once labeled unworthy was now their public pride. But I was careful. I accepted what aligned with my values. I rejected anything that felt like performance. Zayn and I made a pact: we would raise Rafi to know humility before legacy. Truth before tradition. Love before lineage. And every time someone tried to twist our story, I'd correct them with one line: we weren't accepted, we demanded space. And we filled it. My parents eventually met Rafi. It was quiet. No cameras. No apologies rehearsed. Just emotion. My father held him like he was porcelain. My mother sobbed uncontrollably, whispering, "He looks like you did when you were small. Before we forgot how to see you." I didn't promise them anything that day. I didn't wrap things up in a bow. But I allowed them a beginning. Because sometimes, power isn't in slamming doors shut, it's in deciding who you let back in. And I had grown into a woman who didn't just carry a legacy, I controlled it. Years passed. I wrote a memoir, not about wealth, but about being silenced and finding my voice. It became a national bestseller. Girls in uniforms lined up at book signings to tell me they saw themselves in my story. Some had babies of their own. Some had parents who stopped speaking to them. Some were just scared. And to each of them, I said the same thing: let them shut the door. But never forget, you still have keys to build your own. One evening, as I tucked Rafi into bed, he looked up at me and asked, "Mummy, were you scared when you had me?" I smiled. Yes. But I was brave too. He looked puzzled. "How can you be both?" I kissed his forehead. Because being brave doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you fight anyway. And I fought for you before you even had a name. He smiled, eyes closing. "You won." And I whispered, "Yes, baby. We both did." So if you've watched this far, maybe you're like me once, doubted, dismissed, pushed to the edge. But listen closely, your story isn't over. Not if you decide to write the next chapter. I was the girl they shamed, the daughter they threw away, the woman they tried to silence. But I rose. I endured. I built. And in the end, they didn't just need me. They begged. Drop a comment below. Where are you watching from and what time is it right now? Let's light up this story across the world. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful true stories like this. Your voice matters.